Oh, Brian.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we're ready?
You're ready.
All right, it's 8:32. We'll call this meeting to order. Commissioner Williams is not present. Is there any special arrangements that need to be made for anybody? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open this up to planning.
Anyone mind calling for conflicts of interest?
Is there any conflicts of interest?
Commissioner Domke has no known conflicts of interest.
Commissioner Corn has none.
All right. Dave Fisher, Bonner County Planning, here to go over the Deer Acres Minor Land Division, file MLD 0063-24. This file was received on December 23rd, 2024, and ultimately denied based on two reasons. The first reason this file was denied is let me back up, sorry. Not feeling the greatest this morning. The Bonner County Code, Title 12-600, subdivision files and rules governing those. Going to go over the chronology of the land divisions that the applicant applied for previous to this application. Those are also shown on Appendix B. The applicants used MLD 0108-21, approved and recorded on 8/13/2021 under instrument number 990809 to create 4 lots known as Happy Meadows. Shortly after, Bonner County approved and recorded ordinance number 634, file AM 0016-20 on 8/6/2021 under instrument number 988985. This ordinance amended Bonner County Revised Code 12-600C as follows. It is unlawful for a person or group of persons acting in concert to attempt to avoid this article by acting in concert to divide a parcel of land or sell subdivision lots by using a series of owners or conveyances, or by any other method that ultimately results in the division of lands into a subdivision or the sale of subdivided land. This section this activity is further limited under the definition of in 12-411 of minor land division. Any division of land into 4 or fewer lots or parcels. The exception, those lots under common ownership and limited to use to common open space or agricultural pursuits need not be counted as a lot for purposes of determining applicable land division procedures only. And the important part, a minor land division shall not be used contiguously to avoid the regular subdivision process. The applicants then used MLD 0112-21, approved and recorded on 9/21/2021 under instrument number 992083 to create 4 additional lots known as Happy Meadows First Edition, directly adjacent to Happy Meadows. This approval came after the ordinance number 634 was adopted into Bonner County Revised Code. It is assumed this MLD was approved because it is applied for before the ordinance took effect. The applicants then used file SS 0007-21, approved on 4/8/2022 and recorded on 9/25/2024. Under instrument number 1038673 to create 10 lots known as Happy Meadows Second Edition, directly adjacent to Happy Meadows First Edition. Happy Meadows Second Edition included Lot 2 of Happy Meadows First Edition, a 10.030 acre lot that was further divided into one 5.028 acre lot and one 5.001 acre lot, becoming lots 1 and 2, Block 3 of Happy Meadows Second Edition. The applicants applied for this additional minor land division file that we're discussing today, file MLD 0063-24 on 12/23/2024 to further divide Lot 2 of Happy Meadows First Edition. All divisions shown on map in Appendix B, decision letter sent February 25th, 2025. And you guys have Appendix B. I wasn't able to get that pulled up this one. That's all right.
It should be in there.
You can see the four files. They start at the north. There's MLD, MLD, short plat, and now this MLD, all contiguous. The second reason this file was denied was the depth to width standard. The applicants filed for this application on December 23rd, 2024. Staff emailed the project representative on that day requesting additional information, as well as advising that an adjustment must be made or a variance approved since the depth to width standards were not being met. This included my calculations placing the proposed depth to width at 4.567 to 1, where a 3.2 to 1 ratio is the maximum allowable for Bonner County Revised Code 12621A. The project representative responded to my email on January 16th, 2025, stating that the surveyor believes the calculations are correct for the depth to width ratio. Subsequent phone conversations and status checks made it clear that the application was not going to be revised. On February 25th, 2025, I sent the decision letter to the applicant and project rep along with information on the appeal process. The project representative responded on February 27th stating that they would be appealing as well as arguing the code sections as they had been using an old code standard and disagreed with the interpretation of the lot measurement definitions. On February 27th, 2025, the project representative submitted an administrative exception application for the depth to width deviation. Staff advised that this deviation would require a full variance application with a public hearing. Staff also provided calculations in the code sections pertaining to lot measurements again. On March 7th, 2025, the project representative submitted an appeal letter as well as a variance application for the depth to width deviation. On March 10th, 2025, the project representative submitted payment for the appeal fees. In conclusion, on December 23rd, 2024, the applicant submitted an application to divide a 10.61 acre lot into a 5.53 acre lot and a 5.08 acre lot through the MLD process. The applicant was advised that the application was not consistent with Bonner County Revised Code and the depth to width standards were not being met. Applicant was asked to adjust the application and this was not done. During a review of the files, found that right before the passing of the Bonner County Ordinance 634, the applicants had completed an MLD on the parcel to the north and then completed an additional MLD on the parcel containing the subject lot right after the ordinance passed. The applicants followed this action with a short plat using the maximum number of allowable lots for a short plat without doing a subdivision shortly after. This short plat also included a portion of the previous MLD and created 3 consecutive and contiguous land divisions without going through the full subdivision process as required by Bonner County Revised Code 12-600. The applicants then submitted the subject MLD to further divide a lot within these contiguous divisions. This MLD application is a clear violation of Bonner County Revised Code 12-411, which states that a minor land division shall not be used contiguously to avoid the regular subdivision process. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Commissioner Domke?
The timeline and aspects of the contiguous nature of the land division application process seems pretty clear and well documented. Thank you for that thoroughness. The one thing I'd like to just better understand is the depth to width ratio on the lots. I know it sounds like from the record there's a bit of back and forth conversation that occurred with yourself and the applicant. And it sounded like there was an instance where they agreed with the calculation and then they were challenging the calculation and then they were asking for a variance. Was there?
The one issue with that is their response that the surveyor believed the calculations were correct. I talked with them. I took that as they were agreeing with what I was telling them.
Yeah.
After they appealed, they said that's not how they intended that to be read.
Okay.
That they felt that their calculations were correct.
But their letter stated that they considered yours to be correct. Okay. And then they requested a variance.
Yes, they've applied for a variance. As of the end of last week, they did not want to pay or pursue that yet. And there was still some argument over how to measure.
And page 10, which is Appendix C in the file. Are those the county staff's measurements and calculations?
Yes, those are our measurements.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any additional questions for staff at this time.
Okay. I don't either. Do we take questions from the public at this time, or do we do the?
I'm going to let the applicant make
Applicant.
the presentation.
Okay.
They are.
Jessica?
Tiffany?
Good morning.
Morning, Tiffany.
Okay, so just want to say thank you for that presentation from staff. We do just want to touch on the two topics for the appeal, which is the accusation that this is circumventing some major subdivision process based on the dates that were provided from previous subdivisions, and then that depth to width ratio that we've been going back and forth on. So if I could point to those dates that were mentioned, the 2021 dates and the 2022 dates, those from the previous three subdivisions in this neighborhood were all approved dates. So those dates would be irrelevant to the code changing in August of 2021. The only relevant date is the application date, which I don't see, and we didn't apply for those subdivisions. So just based on the first two minor plats, it looks like they would have been applied before this code changed. And I can't comment on the short plat. I don't know how long that project took, so it's hard to say when that was applied for. But, I mean, that was a 10 lot plat. So he certainly wasn't circumventing any, he wasn't doing any consecutive minor subdivisions at that time by applying for that short plat. But yes, so the only relevant date is the application date, which we don't see in this timeline. The fact that the planning commission at that time approved those consecutive minor plats leads me to believe that they were applied for before that code changed. The second issue with the depth to width, there was a miscommunication on that in the chain of emails where I stated the surveyor agreed with the calculations. Right below that were his calculations. Our surveyor has been adamant throughout this project that his calculations are correct for the depth to width. It is allowed in the code, and that there was no need for a variance. So it was a miscommunication. I can see how it was taken later. I wish we could have resolved it before we got to this point. I don't believe I have ever spoken to David on the phone, so it was just a back and forth on email. But we are still in disagreement with how planning commission, or I'm sorry, the planning department is coming up with their formula. Based on the code language, it states that the calculations need to be along a boundary, and the planning department is calculating it across, diagonal, which leaves a big gap in, we're coming up with 4.085 to 1. He was coming up with something like 4.5 to 1. So we are in disagreement with that. We have reached out to Glahe, the subcontracted surveyor for the planning department. And they were also in agreement with how that code should be read along a boundary, not across a boundary. Not across, however, wherever they're coming up with how they're doing that math, we're not in agreement with. And then the parcel design, based on that depth to width, they keep referring to the 3.2 to 1, when actually it should be a 4.2 to 1 because it has over 300 feet along the road frontage. So yes, we're contending both items. Did you have any questions for me?
I'm just trying to follow what you're stating because I don't have anything from you in front of me. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time keeping up on where you're talking about.
It just on the depth to width?
Yes.
There should be some,
Page 10 of 14, I'm guessing that's where we're looking at.
the email from March 13th should be in that packet.
This is the road. Yeah.
In that, for lot 2, the surveyor has his calculations.
So I'm gonna jump in for a moment. So what I hear the applicant stating is that these two red dimensions are the dimensions that the planning staff have looked at, and they're saying the way they're interpreting the code, they would use
Those lines.
one of the lot lines to determine that depth to width calculation.
That's correct, thank you.
That's what I'm hearing.
You're welcome. Just wanted to be sure we were all on the same page.
Yeah, that's exactly how we're interpreting that. I mean, it does say along the boundary in the code for that determination. Lot measurements definition between the furthest 2 points along the boundary of the lot, parcel, or tract.
Are you pulling that up, Commissioner?
Yeah, I was just pulling up the code language
Okay.
that's being referenced.
I can present it if you like, Mr.
12-621, I believe is the reference.
Can you present that for us?
It's actually in lot measurements definition. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say. 12-812 lot measurement.
The furthest 2 points along the boundary of the lot.
Lot, parcel, or tract. Well, there's 812 lot design. Yeah. And lot measurement.
And the width of the lot measurement is taken at where the lot meets the road? No.
So. Well, we should probably wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on to the question, Mr. Chair.
So, and that's where it gets a little tricky with the code, that 12-621 lot and parcel design, that where it gets the 300 or less in width. That's the width described there is different than the width that the lot measurements are defining. This lot and parcel design should be referencing road frontage as described in B of that lot and parcel design.
I'm sorry, you said B?
12621B,
Oh, it's 621, okay, we're back at that.
yeah. References road frontage.
I'm gonna pull up that and the definition section, the 12-812.
Okay.
I started at 621 and then I moved to,
Yeah, it's both of them.
yep, that makes sense. Okay, let's see. So you're looking at 621B.
So if you look at that language, it references road fronting road angles. The way that the surveyors have been interpreting this whole lot design, A should also be road frontage. So it would be 300 or less along a road.
we get that put up on the screen or?
Sure.
I understand your statement. It's not what it states in the code, though.
She's calling out this 621 A and B
Yes.
calculations here. Fine.
So again, if we're talking to the land surveyors, including the Glahey subcontracted, that's how they're interpreting it. They're using that. What's allowed, the 3.2 to 1 is whether or not you have 300 or less along a road. So, and because this property that we're proposing to divide is over 300 feet along the frontage road, we should be at 4.2 to 1.
So could you please clarify where the road frontage distance is being derived from? Because I don't see it anywhere.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Other than the opinion of a third party, is there some place in the code that you're referencing?
For the frontage aspect,
Yes, ma'am.
well, just this section of the code. It's how they've been interpreting it for years.
It does not spell it out that that measurement is taken where the property meets the road.
It also doesn't not spell it out. That's how they've been interpreting it, is along a road.
Okay, and then, so then the two areas of the code, just to fully clarify, we just went over 12-621. You offered your perspective as to how to read and interpret subsections A and B. And then looking at definitions under 12-812 lot measurements. We were looking at A, the depth of a lot, parcel, or tract shall be measured of the distance between the furthest 2 points along the boundary of the lot, parcel, or tract.
Correct.
Okay. I think I understand the applicant's position. I don't have any further questions.
So according to what I am looking at here, that one lot, if we were to interpret it as where the property meets the road, is still less than 300 feet.
Do you want to save the deliberation for after we get through the?
It's
I was just clarifying the,
It's 311.28 feet. There's a 292 that's called out, and then there's a curve length of 18 feet that's in that. You can see the curve like legend. I don't know if you can see it in that small printout.
I just see the 297 feet.
Then just to the left of that, that'll be a C1, which is curve length 1, that has a measurement broken down.
I don't have that on this piece of paper.
There's another.
It was the plat that we provided.
Go into the plats in the back. Let's see. I think it's the last 11 by 17 sheet, Commissioner.
I still don't see a curve measurement or whatever that's being discussed.
Yeah, so they do it on a table, and then they'll reference. Should have.
This is what we're discussing, I guess, is that.
So we have these two road frontages, and then C1 and C2 are the curve lengths. So it doesn't look, you can't tell it as a curve because of the scale.
Right.
But that's where they're defining what the distance is for that curve in the table.
Okay.
So you would have to add, if you were looking at that, right, you'd look at the 292, and then we'd add the C1 curve length or chord length to get center of road, and then we've got the
Okay.
inside easement. Yeah, it's a little weird when you have a curve.
Yeah. All right, do we have any other questions for her?
No, I don't know if you want to see if the applicant has anything else they'd like to offer.
Is there anything else that you'd like to speak about before we go into public comment?
I don't think so. Thank you for the opportunity to appeal and discuss this.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll open up for public comment for this reconsideration. Seeing none, neutral. Are you for or neutral?
I just want to clarify some things, I don't.
You might want to grab a mic.
I can go up here too.
Okay.
That way you don't have to have the mic up there. Matt Linscott, Bonner County. We've had this discussion many times I have had with staff. We might not all agree all the time, but that's okay. We still are friends. The minor land division and stuff, when they got ahead and adopted 12600C, it says non-contiguous. That code does not represent a retroactive effect. There's nothing expressed in that language that it applies to retroactive reflect. Minor land divisions in any kind of application vest upon time of application, not approval. So, sitting here, I couldn't track all of them, but you must look at the dates of application, not dates of approval for that contiguous language. It does state to go ahead, you can not create contiguous land splits, to subvert that subdivision application. Well, subdivision is defined by 11 or more lots in Bonner County Code. So today, if Ron and Brian and Matt, let's say we're all cousins or brothers or whatever, and Ron goes, he has a 10-acre tract that's zoned for fives, and he wants to go in for an MLD. And so he goes in for that MLD prior to that August 4th, 2021 date. I, being a relative, do the same thing. And then Brian comes in and does the same thing. It depends on those dates of application. The one that Ron applied for prior to August 8th does not apply. Also, our two MLDs, so to speak, does not create a subdivision because it's less than 11 parcels. That if that's the intent, then that code needs to be readdressed because it's kind of ambiguous in the way it may be or could be applied. When we gone ahead and when staff gone ahead and presented the depth to width, we changed that from 3 to 1 and 4 to 1 to 3.2 to 1 and so forth. They had to explain it to me several times, and I do real estate, been in real estate for over 40 years. I deal with real estate and stuff all the time. It's very confusing. It appears to me if we have two certified surveyors coming up with different interpretations on how that can be or should be addressed, it seems like there's some uncertainty. It could be clarified better as well. Because if you have two of those surveyors coming up with different opinions on that, then the code must be somewhat ambiguous in how it can be applied. That should be addressed as well. That's all I wanted to say, especially those MLDs, short class and everything. Your rights vest at time of application. This is something that we've been told for many years. I think it's even in statute. I believe county's attorneys even argue this point in one of their briefs on some MLDs that the county approved a few years ago. So if you have any questions on that, I suggest you speak with with Bill and verify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. We have any other public comment? Do I have any other public comment against it? Okay, so at this time, we'll go into deliberation.
All right.
I personally would like to address one thing right out of the gate, I guess, is I would like staff to present, again, to clarify for the record, the date that the new ordinance went into effect, and then how many applications were applied for after that date for MLDs.
Thank you. Dave Fisher again. Quite a few things I could clarify there, but the date that the ordinance went into effect was 8/6/2021. There were 2 files after that date. And the reason that the application date for those previous files wasn't brought up is because those files were approved. We're not debating those files, we approved them. I only addressed the completion date and the application date for the file that we're here to talk about. That answer your question?
Yep, so everything was done before that, except for this file that we're looking at today,
No, the short plat was done after that as well.
the short plat, okay. And what was the date that that was applied for?
I don't have that in my report. Again, that was approved and not part of this file.
I'm assuming it was in 21. Would that have to do with the short plat number?
It was approved. Yes, according to the file number, it was applied for at some point in 2021.
Okay. And the ordinance states that you cannot do an MLD for at least another 2 years after you do an MLD or short plat?
It says that the same land that was divided under an MLD can't be divided again for 2 years.
Okay.
As far as contiguous side-by-side MLDs, there is no time limit. It just says you cannot do those.
And we don't have anything other than what we've already been presented as far as determining the width of the lot, do we? Where that measurement's supposed to be taken from?
Yes, I could actually clarify that. In the definition section, we kind of looked at the first part of it. The second part states width and defines that. It's not taken at a single point, it's a calculated average. And in this case, that calculated average was under 300 as per my measurements, so they are bound to the 3.2.
The short plat application date is November 30th of 21.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that was after the county code was revised, the ordinance 634 was revised. And then if I'm looking at the map on page 8 of 14 correctly, which shows the different MLD and short plat numbers as an overlay, it appears that SS 0007-21, which was applied for after the ordinance was changed, is contiguous with and actually overlaps or includes MLD 0063-24.
It's contiguous, it does not overlap that one.
Yeah, it did not include that. It doesn't look
I
like.
thought there was.
That parcel, if it
Parcel.
wasn't highlighted, would be purple as part
Okay.
of MLD 0112.
Okay, so it's only contiguous. I mean, that's minor clarification, but thank you. I did misunderstand that. So then there was a lot 2 that I thought was included in both.
I could have added more pictures, but on that same map, the blue parcel marked MLD 0063, the 2 gray parcels to the left that were part of SS7 were also part of the purple MLD 0112 before they
Okay.
went into SS7.
Gotcha, thank you. So those are the lot 2 from Happy Meadows second edition that were also a part of the first edition.
Yes.
Okay. That was the piece I need to clarify. Thank you.
So if the short plat was applied for on November 30th of 21, and this MLD that we're discussing today was applied for on 12/23 of 24, that's after the 2-year time limit. Sounds like I'm not sure.
So staff is indicating there's no time limit to the exception under Bonner County Code 12-600C. Minor land divisions shall not be used contiguously to avoid the regular subdivision process. So if it were 2 simultaneous, or 2 MLDs back to back, the time frame applies, is what I understand, but in this, based on this part of the code, there's no time frame associated with it.
So what is staff saying is not correct then by allowing this to happen?
The short plat was a maximum of 10 parcels, which they did.
Right?
Then if you add this in, it creates 12. If you add in the previous MLD, it's 16. So rather than following through with the subdivision process, they attempted to go with the minor land division, the easy process without all the standards, and do multiple in a row and still end up with a subdivision by definition with the overall number of parcels.
It definitely looks that way, looking at the map. But given the time limits and when the other ones were done before the ordinance was in place, is what we have to look at. And I'm just not able to wrap my head around why this wouldn't be allowed, not discussing the depth to width ratio right now, but just the application itself, why we wouldn't allow it per code.
The short plat was applied for after, which is 10 lots.
Right?
And now this MLD is also applied for after, that's 12 lots total.
Because it's contiguous.
Right, and it's after the code section, so 12 lots by definition will require a subdivision file.
I agree, we could ignore those 2 prior approvals that have, applications and approvals that happened. Let me just say applications that happened prior to the change of the code.
This used to be this.
Yeah, so.
Because
that
I'm not
was
sure
one-
why they were allowed to do this right next to these then. If this was 10, that really should have been more than 10 if we're,
They followed the short plat, which is more rigorous than the MLD.
uh-huh.
So they followed that, which had the 10 max. And then by doing the MLD just after that, it would end up turning into more than a short plat.
Right. But how were they allowed to do the short plat? We're saying, staff is saying that we shouldn't do this because then that turns that short plat into 12 instead of 10. Well, I see 10 right now without this section that we're dealing with.
Right.
So if that's the case, then wouldn't it made that 11? Because that would include that. I'm having a hard time understanding why they didn't do 9, which, and then including this one would be 10. Why are we adding it at this point in time into the short plat?
So let me see if I have it correct. Staff can correct me if I'm off. So my understanding is that the first 2 MLDs lawfully produced these lots. And then
Those, well, so this and this was split into two.
That's my understanding. And then after the ordinance changed, they lawfully did a short plat and created these 10 lots. But then by taking this existing lot and dividing it in two to split it under minor land division now, because it's contiguous with these that happened after the ordinance changed, and said you can't do the contiguous minor land division to circumvent a more significant process for subdivision, then really this, instead of doing the 10 parcel, which was the max short plat, they should have gone through the more rigorous process to create a 12 parcel subdivision.
It
Is what
seems
I'm
that way.
understanding.
It seems that way.
I'm understanding that's the position the staff is
Because if
taking.
this wasn't included in the short plat, when the short plat took place, then why are we including it in the short plat now by saying it's going to raise it to 12? That's,
Because
That's
that's
my
what the code,
stumbling
yeah,
block.
so the code is saying that it doesn't want this process of doing one and then the other sequentially to create what would be more than what would be allowed with that process. And so otherwise, you can kind of play that checker game where you just keep.
right. Yeah.
So the way I'm reading the code and understanding what's been presented, it does appear that this would be circumventing what would be the more rigorous subdivision process to do a 12 parcel subdivision,
I would agree with that.
12
in-
lot,
in
excuse me,
theory, right? But where is that supported in code?
right there. Highlighted.
Minor, an MLD shall not be used contiguously to avoid. So that's where,
I think that's the linchpin piece in the code that staff is bringing forward for the basis of their decision. I agree with that interpretation.
do you?
I do.
12600C?
Just because of the necessity of, if I came in and said I wanted to create a 12-lot subdivision, it'd be a different process.
Yeah.
And so that would be a more rigorous process. And to do it this way, I believe circumvents that more rigorous process. Because it can have a greater impact when you're getting into this many lots, when we think about safety, all the different services.
Right. No, I understand all the
Yeah.
infrastructure and the roads not having to be built as rigorous, and you end up with 30 people on it instead of 15 or whatever there.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe that's the primary reason that the code was amended to add that language that was highlighted.
Okay.
And so that's, I believe the reason for health, safety, and welfare makes sense to me. And I believe that this approach with this MLD would be circumventing the more rigorous process.
Okay. Do we want to discuss the depth to width ratio?
Sure, I can offer my opinion on that. Unless you want to go
Yeah,
with something.
thanks.
So when I read in the definition in 12-812, the depth of a lot, parcel, or tract shall be measured of the distance between the furthest 2 points along the boundary of the lot, parcel, or tract. So when I read that, the furthest 2 points along the boundary of the lot, parcel, or tract, and then I look at that drawing with the measurements,
These would be the furthest, the longest.
so the furthest points within that abnormal shape. So to me, that makes sense. Instead of looking at a single boundary line, it doesn't say the longest boundary line. It says the furthest 2 points along the boundary line. So it doesn't say a single longest side, but it says
To
2
come up with
points.
the width?
The depth, the length,
Yeah.
the depth. So the reason that makes sense to me is, and these lots are a good example, when you have irregular shaped lots, it can become more challenging to just say that you're going to look at a single side distance. And so, especially when you have those irregular shapes. So the way the code reads to me under the definition section, 2 points, the boundary, right, is the full perimeter. and then the furthest 2 points, whatever they are. So
That
whether
gives
it's-
us the length.
Yeah, so that's in order to do the calculation for the
What
ratio.
gives us the calculation for the width.
And then that's,
Happy to do a demonstration.
that'd be great. I'm sure you can do it more efficiently than I can. Thank you.
Alex Fan, planning staff. So, the way that staff interprets this code and the way that it was intended in 2023 when the code was changed was to get rid of lots that were long and skinny, or to get rid of lots that were irregular shape and to encourage more rectangular lots. So when you have a rectangular lot, or I guess I'll just go through how to do it really quick. So say we have a 1 acre lot. So 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. So say we get the measurement as the code reads is along 2 farthest points along the boundary, not a boundary line. So it would be any point that is along the boundary of the lot. So if we were measuring from here to here, let's say we got 100 feet just for ease of calculation. So that would be the measured depth of the lot. Then to get the calculated width, because the way that code reads, it says it has to be the square footage, which is 43,560 square feet, divided by the measured depth of the lot, which would give us 435.6. So then this is the calculated width. So we would say, okay, the calculated width. So we would take the depth calculation that we got over the calculated width, and that would give us something like 0.25 to 1. Where if we had one that was like this, say it was, again, another 1 acre parcel, we get a calculation of 400 feet, we get a measured depth of 400 feet. We take 43560 divided by 400. I don't know what that number is off the top of my head. But it would be close to, no, I'll just do it really quick.
108.9.
108.9, there we go. So, then we would take 400 feet as our measured depth over our calculated width, which is 108.9, which gives us 3.7. So that would be, that would not conform, or it would not conform because our calculated width is under 300 feet, which requires a 3.2 depth to width ratio, where this one here, the 100-foot, 1 acre lot, gave us a 0.25 to 1, which would meet the depth to width standard. So this would be a allowance of 3.2, and it gives us a 0.25 or however that is. So I think that calculation's wrong, but I obviously didn't have my calculator, so that's the gist of it.
So we're not literally measuring the width, or we're not averaging the width, taking measurements every 10 feet all the way down the long.
No, it's a calculation based on the square footage of the lot and the measured depth. We use the scale provided from the applicant on the plat, and we have a program that we can take that measurement, that scale, and measure the depth of lot or parcel.
Okay. You have any other questions on that?
I do not.
Thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
And that is written into our code.
It has been a hurdle and a bit of a challenge to train the surveyors from what we used to have to what we have now, but what I understand, most of them are on board and understand it. So every now and again, we have a challenge and people argue with us about it, but typically we can explain it and people can get it.
And that is written in the lot measurements definition section of the code.
Perfect.
In the previous lot design, the lot measurement was to find the front of the lot, which was very difficult when you had areas that, you know, start really skinny and then get really large, and people say, well, it fronts the road here, so this is the front of the lot. So that kind of takes away the guessing from everybody's perspective, and creates, at least attempts to create more conforming lots.
You have any further questions?
I do not.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further deliberation?
So I guess based on everything that's been said and questioned and answered, I can restate kind of my overall perspective and see where we're at.
Okay.
So I agree with what's been stated, that the applications that came in prior to the ordinance and code change do not apply to the consideration. We did, however, get clarification that the short plat that created the lower half with the 10 parcels, sorry, the 10 lots, happened after, that application was started after the ordinance was changed, and then this MLD happened after that. So then, based on my reading of Bonner County Code 12-600C, where the last sentence says a minor land division shall not be used contiguously to avoid the regular subdivision process, I do agree with staff that approving the MLD, I believe, would actually go against what the code says and would avoid that more rigorous process to do a 12-lot subdivision. And then, based on how I read the definition of lot measurements and what staff presented, both in the report with their red mark measurements and what staff showed on the whiteboard, I agree with staff that I believe their calculations and measurements have been done correctly for the code. So on the basis of those items, I'm prepared to affirm the decision of denial of the MLD.
I would agree with you. I haven't seen anything that was presented that would show us otherwise, or any reasons not to. I did not see any significant challenges or anything to support the other side of doing this. So I would support your opinion.
Would you like me to move forward with a motion?
I would.
I move to affirm the planning director's decision of denial as written in the administrative staff report decision for this project file MLD 0063-24. The decision is based upon the evidence submitted up to the time of the staff memo was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. This action does not result in the taking of private property.
I'll step down from the chair and second that. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Conkey?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes. That concludes this meeting. It is